There are so many different things to tackle when creating a video podcast, and I've talked a lot about cameras for podcasting in the past, but that's not all there is to it. So now I want to focus more on the hardware and software that you can use to actually record the image from your camera. You can either record internally to your camera or externally to a computer or to another device. And there's really no right or wrong. It's just kind of what works best for you and your workflow. I do think that the average runtime of your podcast really makes a difference and could be the deciding factor here. Things are really simple if you're doing a short podcast. If you're doing 10 to 15 minute episodes, then it's really easy to just kind of record on any camera with any memory card with really no problems. But most podcasts tend to be a lot longer than that. Hour-long podcasts are kind of the average, if not even more. Not every camera memory card is capable of an hour of footage, especially if you are trying to do 4K, which again, I really recommend sticking with 1080 when it comes to video podcasting. But even if you're doing 1080 and you have multiple cameras, you can start gathering up many gigabytes of footage very, very quickly. Also then, depending on how many episodes you're creating, are you recording multiple episodes at once? You can kind of see like, it's like a goldfish that will expand to take up whatever space you give it. So all that to say, like we talked about before, the first option is to record internally to your camera, whether that's a phone or a traditional camera, anything with a memory card. Just make sure that you have enough power and storage space to handle the entire episode. And if you are recording with multiple cameras and you record it internally, you can then take that footage and import it into your video editing software of choice, sync it up, and then cut between the different shots as needed while you're editing. You do also have the option to record externally by connecting your camera to something else, probably a computer. That kind of makes sense. And there are a lot of advantages to that. It can be easier to mix multiple cameras together. I'll kind of show you some software options for that. But also generally, your computer has more storage space usually than your camera does. And if it doesn't, storage space is significantly less expensive. Getting an external SSD like this that can be a couple of terabytes, a couple thousand gigabytes, you can get these for, $100 to $200 for thousands of gigabytes. Whereas especially for higher end, newer cameras, if you want to get terabytes of memory cards, it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So the memory for your computer and the amount of space you can get just is a lot more economical, and it just kind of tends to work really well. Recording externally is also a good option if you have a camera that tends to overheat. It won't necessarily solve all overheating problems on all cameras, but when a camera is recording internally, it's generating a lot of heat because it's capturing all that data, it's interpreting it, it's really busy when a camera is recording internally. When you just have your camera connected to your computer, the camera is just sitting there being a camera. It doesn't have to record. The computer's handling all that. So the camera's generating a lot less heat, using a lot less processing power, since it's all being kind of offloaded to your computer or another device like a switcher. So if you have a camera that's overheating, connecting externally to a computer can help that sometimes, along with simple things like leaving the camera's screen flipped open can sometimes let airflow flow more, so that way the camera doesn't overheat. And depending on your camera, they even make some little fans that you can clip to the back and just keep your camera cool. So all that to say, there are some very practical purposes for recording your podcast externally to a computer. So now you might be saying, awesome, that sounds perfect. I'd love to connect my camera to a computer. Question, how do I connect my camera to a computer? Some newer cameras, especially newer mirrorless cameras, can actually just be connected directly through USB right to your computer. The only thing to keep in mind, which usually isn't a problem when it comes to podcasting, is that if your camera is capable of being connected to a computer through USB, basically just becomes a webcam at that point. Most cameras are limited to 1080p as a max resolution. So even if you have a 4K camera over USB, it becomes a 1080 camera. Like I said before, with the amount of footage and everything, I don't recommend doing a 4K video podcast. I recommend sticking with a 1080 workflow, so that's really not an issue. But it is something to keep in mind if you are someone who's investing in 4K cameras and you want 4K, and then you plug it in through USB, and that's really not possible. There are 4K capture cards out there, and the good news is that if you have a 4K capture card, you don't only have to record in 4K. So that can mean if you want to use your camera to record a video for like a YouTube channel that you want in 4K, then your 4K capture card will let you do that. And then if you want to do your podcast where you don't need 4K and it can be 1080, your 4K capture card will let you do that as well. It can always go down, it just can't go up. The simplest capture card that I would recommend is just this right here. This is the Elgato Cam Link. It is very, very basic. It almost just looks like a USB flash drive. And it does just connect to a USB port on your computer. It can use an adapter if you don't have this kind of USB on your computer. And basically it just has an HDMI input on one side and then the USB connection on the other. And this can handle up to 4K. And it's really cool is that these are really affordable overall. They tend to be about $100, maybe a little bit more. You might see things that look like this for a lot cheaper, like $20 to $25. And I would definitely recommend staying away from those. Every single person I know who has used one of those has had problems with it. Even me, I tried testing out a few. The reliability is not always great. The quality is not always great. Sometimes the image doesn't fill up the frame or the colors are weird. I've been using cam links for, I don't know, the past 6 or 7 years, and I've literally never had a problem with one ever. They've been fantastic and they're affordable. It's definitely worth the investment for just an Elgato cam link if you want the simplest way to get an HDMI camera into your computer. Once the cam link or whatever capture card you're using is connected to your computer, you can just select that as an audio or video source in any streaming or recording software or conferencing software. If you're using Zoom or Teams or whatever, these can let you use your camera with that too. So that's a way to get your camera into your computer. But the next question is, a lot of video podcasts use more than one camera. So how do you connect more than one camera to your computer? Depending on your computer, a lot of this actually does depend on your computer and the power of your computer. It is possible sometimes to connect more than one cam link. Sometimes people have 2 cameras and like, can I just get 2 of these and connect them? If you have a powerful, high-speed computer that can work, I wouldn't really recommend connecting more than 2 of these. 2 can even be pushing it on some computers. The other way to do that, if you want to connect multiple cameras, is to use something like this, which is an HDMI switcher. This specific one is the Blackmagic ATEM Mini, and it lets me connect multiple HDMI sources and then switch between them. And honestly, these are pretty amazing. There are a lot of different models at different price points, but this basic thing of switching between HDMI video sources up until just a few years ago used to cost at least thousands and thousands of dollars, like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 minimum. Then this one specifically, the Blackmagic ATEM Mini, came out for $300, and it was just like, I can't believe you can do that for $300. They have a little bit of audio processing as well. We'll talk about why I kind of don't recommend you use that in a second. They can usually do basic green screening, basic picture-in-picture. Depending on the one you get and the features that it has, it can sometimes do more or less. But more or less, the basic thing is that it just lets you switch between sources, and then this connects to your computer through USB. So right here, for example, this is my recording software of choice. This is Ecamm Live. That's right here on my desktop. And I just have the Blackmagic design set up right there. And now I can switch between. Here's a camera 2 over here that shows my Rodecaster. You can see the ATEM right there, and I can switch right back to camera 1. I can do all that right here with these buttons. Since switchers are connected through USB, the computer cannot see the individual inputs. It just sees whatever you currently have selected. It can't see all 4 cameras, and then you can take those and break them out into like their own scenes in your software and all that. It just sees switcher. So whatever the switcher is sending out, that's what it sees. Depending on the switcher that you use, you could also have some other really cool options. A lot of the Blackmagic ones actually let you connect an SSD directly to them and record to the SSD. And in those cases, you can also usually record independent isolated tracks for each camera. So even though the switcher just switches to whatever you're seeing, it will record your finished show with all the switches, but it will also give you all of the separate tracks too. So you're recording basically all your cameras at once to your SSD. That is an incredibly handy feature, especially for podcasting. Now, I did mention that the audio performance on these is typically pretty bad. They kind of just have very weak preamps. This one just has 2 3.5 millimeter inputs. I have never been a fan of using built-in audio on most switchers. Most. We'll talk about some in a second. Generally, what I recommend is kind of this right here. You have your mixer or your interface or even just a USB microphone, and then you have video. You kind of have your audio and your video separate, and then you put them into your computer, and in your software, whatever software you're using, you can usually choose a video source and an audio source. So you choose a switcher for your video and then the audio for your audio, and then they get mixed together. Now, something that almost every podcaster is going to have to deal with if they're mixing an audio and a video source together is lag or latency. It is very common to notice that your voice, that your audio and your video are not synced together, and a lot of people start worrying and think that something is wrong. Their computer's not powerful enough, their mixer's broken, their switcher's broken. This is, I just want to tell you, a very normal thing. This is totally fine. If your audio is out of sync, it is something that's very easy to fix, and it is not a problem with your hardware. The important thing to understand is that you're working with a video signal and an audio signal. Video signals are much more data heavy than audio signals are, especially when we're just talking about these USB devices. So it's almost like if you think about, say you have two runners who are equally like top athletes, super well trained, they can match each other perfectly, they can beat every record, they can tie each other for every record, they're super capable. One of them is holding a feather and the other is holding like a bunch of bricks, and you try to make them run a race at the same time. Even though they're just as capable, the one holding all the bricks is probably going to start falling behind, and the one that's just holding a feather is going to go kind of at their normal speed. That's sort of what's happening with audio and video. The video signal is so heavy, there's just so much more there that basically all you need to do is add a delay to your audio, and then they'll come back in sync. You need to give this guy some bricks to carry, so that way they come back in sync. Most streaming application software and video recording software lets you do that in real time. And I'll show you how to do that in a couple of them real quick. And then hardware switchers like the Rodecaster also have built-in audio delays as well. Same with the Ecamm. So if you're having that issue, whether it's through your hardware or through your software, there is some kind of solution to fix it. Just know that nothing's wrong with your equipment. It's totally normal for things to be out of sync, and all you usually need to do is add a small audio delay and it will bring things back into sync. So now let's talk about software. You're looking at me through Ecamm Live right now, but I'm actually gonna be looking down here because my Ecamm is down here. So I'm gonna be looking down here. Ecamm is my favorite software for recording podcasts and for streaming as well. Even if you don't plan to stream, streaming software is probably what you want to use for your podcast. The most popular being Ecamm or OBS. Ecamm, or Ecamm Live, which is its full name, is a paid Mac-only software application. So it is something you have to pay for annually, and it does only work on Mac. But Ecamm is so good that I've even known people who use Windows computers, but then buy like the cheapest Apple computer they can find just to run Ecamm for their streams and their podcasts. And with some pretty powerful computers being available at significantly lower prices than they have ever been before, that's actually something that can make sense if you want to use Ecamm, but you tend to live in the PC or the Windows ecosystem. Some of the basics of Ecamm apply to other software, but what I really like about Ecamm is how modular it is. So here you can kind of see different windows I have. If I were doing a live stream, my chat would show up here, and I could actually put the chat, bring it into my show right here. It's very easy to brand things. It's very easy to create It's very easy to create like custom looking stuff that goes, different scenes that go within, whatever your brand looks like, whatever, specific type of show that you're working on. There's an interview mode that lets you bring people in remotely. You can bring up to 5 different people, and you can add them and create overlays and really make things look slick and professional and polished. You have a lot of options in your settings. It can record up to 4K. So if you are recording, you can stream and record into 4K, and you can also stream to different sources. So I know we're not really talking too much about streaming right now, but right now you can stream, like here I have Instagram and my YouTube channel. You can add different sources and then stream simultaneously to those if you have, the internet connection that allows that kind of bandwidth. I can also adjust my camera. I can crop in, so I can even create like different scenes. That's kind of almost different angles is what you could think of. So I will create a new scene. We'll call this second angle. This can be the same source as before, but in this case, I'm actually going to just crop in on it. So there, now I have this kind of shot here. My main scene has this, and now I have this. So I'm using one camera to get 2 different shots, basically, is what's happening here. And you can kind of see the flexibility of being able to do that. I had a title card right here. I have keynote presentations. I have webcams connected. You can use different cameras for different scenes. You can auto go between the different scenes. There is even built-in Zoom functionality. So for podcasting, especially if you want to bring in a lot of people or you're involving in like a webinar or a class that you're teaching, there is native Zoom integration. So even though I don't recommend recording into Zoom by itself, because the Zoom app does all kinds of weird stuff, Ecamm lets you bring in high quality Zoom integration, which is pretty awesome. And if we go into our settings, something you'll see here is if I go into my recording options, I can also record isolated video and audio tracks. So just like I mentioned with the Rodecaster or some of the Ecamms, Ecamm will let me record if I have all these different video sources connected, like I have an Ecamm and say I have a webcam and I have the Rodecaster, I can get separate tracks, separate files for all of those things when my show is done. That does put a lot of stress on your computer. So I can't stress enough that the experience you have does depend on your computer. Pretty much any M series Mac computer is going to give you a great results. but the faster processor and the more RAM you can get, the better. But definitely stick with at least an M series Apple computer for Ecamm Live. So even though I could talk about Ecamm for a long time, what I want to point out here is at the basics, I have a video source selected. I have my Blackmagic A10 Mini, that's my video source. I can switch between that right there. And then I have an audio source, that's what's happening right down here. In this case, it's the Rodecaster. I can add a different one if I want to. I can mute that, I can adjust the level, and I'm just mixing these together. There is a little bit of a delay. So right here, you see this thing that says mic delay. I selected a 4-frame delay, and that brings everything back into sync. That gives me 4 bricks to the audio signal to slow it down with the video signal, and then everything is in sync. Now, even though Ecamm is my favorite, there are other options that are also maybe more budget friendly on the Mac. Just like I was doing with audio, I can open up QuickTime, I can go to File, and I can do a new movie recording. And then in here, I can actually select my camera, I can select my microphone, I can press record, and that's how I can merge those together. There's a chance they might not be in sync because I don't have a way of adding a delay. So I could do that through my Rodecaster, I can add a delay, or I could put that file into my video editing software, separate the audio from the video, and just kind of nudge the audio over a little bit to get things back in sync. But just using the free QuickTime app is a way to record audio and video. And whether you're using a PC or a Mac, another very powerful software option is called OBS, which is actually totally free. And again, it works on PCs and Macs. OBS has been around for a long time. It's something I'm very, very impressed with how good and how capable this software has gotten. So as we're looking at OBS, it kind of looks like Ecamm, but also kind of looks a little bit different. But at its core, I'm doing the same thing. This is software that's intended for streaming, but you can also just click record, and then you can just record with it without having to stream. Same with Ecamm, and both applications also then let you run your camera through them and then select either your Ecamm or your OBS virtual camera in other applications. So if you want to use Ecamm, but you're running it into a Zoom meeting and you want to have all the cool graphics and things, you can actually just do it that way, even though you're not recording in Ecamm. Same with OBS. If you want to process your audio, process your video, create all these different scenes, and then use it in some other application, you can select Ecamm or OBS as a video source in other applications. But at the very basics, if we look right here, we have video capture device that you can kind of see is my Blackmagic design. That's the A10 Mini. I have my resolution selected. And then over here, I have my audio selected as well, and they just get mixed together. And I've got scenes. So I have another scene here that is, well, there's nothing there right now, but I could have another scene, and I've got my main scene there. And it's very easy to create, custom scenes and custom layouts and mix sources, very similar to Ecamm, but I have found the reason I prefer Ecamm personally is because it is more reliable in my experience and way more user-friendly without sacrificing power. So sometimes when things become user-friendly, you lose some of the control and capabilities. Ecamm doesn't sacrifice anything, but it's very user-friendly. OBS is free software, so it's not like you're going to have customer support or anything, but there is a huge online OBS community, so you can search through, things other people have done, other people have figured out to find solutions to problems. For free software, I mean, it's software that would be worth paying for because it's so good, but it is free, which is pretty crazy. And with OBS, if I go into my audio settings, you'll kind of see here for every source, I can actually do this sync offset. And this is done in milliseconds instead of frames. I have found frames to be much easier because like 4 frames is easy. Milliseconds, you kind of got to do some trial and error. Do I want 500 milliseconds, 900? It sort of changes. Once you have it figured out, you shouldn't have to change it again unless your hardware changes. You'd use a different camera, use a different capture card. But if everything in your setup stays the same, once you get these settings dialed in, they should also stay the same. A couple of things to be aware of when it comes to OBS is that it does not have the ability to do isolated track recording. So if you want all your video sources, everything like Ecamm does, OBS does not offer that. That's an Ecamm thing if you want to do software. And just in general, OBS is a lot more tinkery and sort of fussy, fiddly, I guess is kind of the word, than Ecamm is. Like Ecamm will sort of take any video source and make it work. With OBS, I need to go into my capture device. I need to make sure that I have the exact frame rate, the exact resolution. If I have any of these settings slightly off, I'm not going to get a video signal. So you really need to dial things in. It's very easy for small changes to suddenly kind of cascade and cause other problems. Again, you have a ton of power with this application, but there is a pretty steep learning curve. And because it isn't paid, you don't have customer support. Like if you're using Ecamm and you're stuck in the middle of a project, you just reach out to their support team who will pretty much instantly, I know this sounds like a commercial, but I really do love Ecamm. And then they have an actual customer support team to help you with your problems. So it kind of depends on what you want to invest in your podcast. If you're just starting out and you're thinking, okay, I don't know that I want to pay for something like Ecamm Live, but I don't want the basics of just like Quicktime, then OBS is a really good way to dive into more advanced software. And then you can decide over time if OBS works for you and you're just happy sticking with it, or if you want to move on to Ecamm Live and see if that kind of suits you a little bit better. It's all about just what works best for you. All of our brains kind of handle things a little differently. We sort of connect with things a little bit differently. So whatever kind of clicks with you and works for you, that's the thing to use. Now, in addition to the hardware and software options that we've just covered, there are also some newer hybrid options that can act as all-in-one production suites. This is the YoloBox and this is the Rodecaster Video. These are more high-end switcher type devices because each of these lets me connect 4 HDMI sources and switch between them, but I really don't need a computer for anything else with these. They can handle graphics, they can handle audio processing significantly better, and they can even stream directly from these devices. And the YoloBox has a built-in screen. I can connect any HDMI display to the Rodecaster Video, switch between them. I can create very high-quality streams with using just these devices. And both of these also have an auto switching feature built in, which basically means you can pair a video source to an audio source, select some of your preferences for how you want it to work, and then without anybody having to be behind the switcher, it will switch based on who's talking, but it will do so in a way that's not super robotic. So it just is whoever's making noise, it just kind of cuts back and forth, and that can almost be distracting because it's very robotic and it's not usually how things are edited. It really does a good job of mixing in your different camera angles, cutting to people for reactions while someone else is talking, and you don't have to do anything. You just push the button and then you just have your podcast and it takes care of everything for you. Both of these have an auto switching feature that works pretty well. But of course, as you would expect, a device like this is significantly more expensive. These are more in the $1,200 to $1,500 price range, versus a simple HDMI switcher, which could be like $300. The YoloBox and the Rodecaster Video, while they are very fully featured, aren't quite as fully featured as Ecamm or OBS, especially in the way that Ecamm lets you natively create graphics and things. These are good and they let you do really cool stuff. And the YoloBox has a very cool live sports display if you need to do like sports scores or anything, but they're not quite there. Just pretty close. You can create scenes, you can do picture-in-picture, you can change color and branding and logos and all that and play media files, but Ecamm just kind of lets you create from scratch higher quality graphics more easily. But the thing I really wanted to highlight is that both of these do make better audio easier. The YoloBox lets you connect something like a Rodecaster Pro or another interface directly through USB. So even though this does have mic inputs, which are okay, they're actually better than the Ecamm, it does let you connect a higher end mixer or microphone directly through USB and get higher quality audio more easily. The Ecamms don't let you do that. The Rodecaster Video lets you do the exact same thing. I can connect a Rodecaster Pro through USB, but it also has 2 full-size XLR connectors here. And internally, in addition to all of the video processing, it basically has a Rodecaster Pro built inside. All of the processing, all of the functionality, all of the clean gain. I can run SM7Bs through this. So the Rodecaster Video is by far the best all-in-one audio and video switcher suite that I have found, especially if you just need 1 or 2 XLR microphones. So just kind of want to make you aware of these different options. Again, very different budgets and very different price points, but the sky is the limit. So depending on your workflow, there's no right or wrong. It's just about what works for you, what works for your budget, and what works for what you're comfortable with. If you're brand new and you've never done video before, jumping from just recording with a phone to like full-on multicam setup might be too much too soon. And it might be something, if you ever get to it, it takes a bit of time. So just remember that every podcast workflow is unique, and this is even more true when it comes to creating a video podcast, but I hope this gives you at least a solid grasp of some of the basics when it comes to your recording hardware and software options for video. And speaking of options, thank you to everyone who opted to support the channel through YouTube channel memberships. And if you want to know more about the world of video podcasting, check out this behind the scenes breakdown of my own video podcasting setup right here.